It's story time.
Please read to me. Read me a story, please.
The Education Channel happily brings you Storytime, a favorite story read to you right here on TV. Storytime is a daily read-aloud show designed just for you. Storytime is made possible by Collier County Public Schools, Barnes & Noble Booksellers, and Naples Daily News.
On the show, our featured story is Fancy Nancy, the Dazzling Book Report, written by Jane O'Connor, cover illustration by Robin Priest-Glasser, and interior illustrations by Ted Enoch. Our guest reader, Cathy Berry, community member.
So are you ready, boys and girls?
We're ready.
Then it's story time. And here's our story.
This book is called Fancy Nancy and the Dazzling Book Report. We're going to find out all about that book report. Monday is my favorite day. Why? Monday is Library Day. Before we leave, we select a book. Select is a fancy word for pick. It is like getting a present for a week. Bree selects a book on dinosaurs. Robert selects a book of funny poems. Teddy selects a scary story. I select a book about an Indian girl. She has a fancy name, Sacagawea. You say it like this, Sacagawea. Later, Miss Glass has thrilling news. Thrilling is even more exciting than exciting. We get to do a book report. Your first book report. How grown up, my mom says at dinner. Yes, I know, I say. My book is a biography. It's about a real person. Whoops. After dinner, I read my book. Dad helps me with the hard words. I learn all about, what's her name? She was a princess. She lived 200 years ago out west. She helped 2 explorers reach the Pacific Ocean. Mom takes me to the art store. I need stuff for the cover of my book report. I want it to be great. I am the second best artist in our class. This isn't bragging. You can ask anybody. I get a bag of little beads, some yarn, and markers. I start working on the cover. I work on it every night. I make, what's her name?
Sacagawea.
Look very brave, because she was. She found food for the explorers. She kept them safe from enemies. Just remember to leave time for the words, Mom keeps saying. I will, I tell her. Ms. Glass wants you to write about the book, Dad says over and over. That's what a report is. I know that, I tell him. Writing the words will be easy. Ta-da! The cover is finished.
Sacagawea.
Has yarn braids. Beads and fringe are glued on her clothes. I must admit it is dazzling. That is fancy for eye-popping. Now I will write my report. I get out lined paper and a pen with a plume. That's a fancy word for feather. The trouble is, I'm tired. I know all about, but the right words won't come. What am I going to do? I have to hand in my report tomorrow. I am desperate, I tell Mom. That means I'm in trouble. Mom lets me stay up longer. Still, my report ends up only 2 sentences long. The next day, everyone sees my cover and says, wow. But hearing other reports makes me nervous. All of them are longer than mine. All of them are more interesting. I read my report. Was a heroine. She helped people in trouble. Everybody wants to hear more. but there is no more. I am crestfallen. That is fancy for sad and ashamed. I spend too much time on the cover, I tell Ms. Glass. Ms. Glass understands. Why don't you tell the class about your book? So I do. I tell them all about the brave things did. She was a heroine. Ms. Glass is a heroine too. At least she is to me. And that's the end of the story.
You're enjoying Storytime, the TV reading show coming your way on the Education Channel.
Our next story is Bedhead, written by Margie Palatini and illustrated by Jack E. Davis. Our guest reader, Marianne Marchese, community member.
Shuffle, schlump, shuffle, schlump, shuffle, schlump. Schlumped bleary-eyed Oliver out of bed, down the hall, and into the bathroom. He yawned, he yanked, splashed some water, swished some mouthwash, gave his front teeth a passable brushing, and then, in a gunkless corner of the soapy silver soap dish, in a fogless smidgen of his father's foggy shaving mirror, right there on the hot water faucet, for heaven's sakes, he saw it. It was big. It was bad. It was Bedhead. Oliver's hair was out of control, way out of control. There was hair going this way, hair going that way, hair going up, hair going down, around and around, and there was one teeny tiny clump of hair way at the back of his head that looked just like a cat's coughed up fur ball. Yikes! Oliver's scream shook, it rattled, it rolled all the way down the stairs and into the kitchen, where Fruit Loops went flying. Milk was spilled, spit and sputtered, and two toasties did triple backflips onto the breakfast table. Oliver, 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 shouted Mom, Dad, and Emily as they ran up the stairs and headed for the bathroom door. Mom leaned close to the door, closer, closer. That's right, even closer. Is everything all right, Oliver? She whispered in her calmest, calm Mom voice. Come now, dear, open the door and let us in. No sound from Oliver, not a whimper, not a peep. Please, said Mom, pretty please, pretty, pretty, pretty please. The doorknob slowly turned. Mom smiled at Dad. She gave a wink to Emily. There you go, she said, taking a step into the bathroom. Nothing can be that bad. Wrong, it was that bad. Yes, sir, no doubt about it, said Dad, surveying the hairy situation from sink side. Oliver, my boy, you're having one bad hair day. Major, said Mom. Total, agreed Emily. Maybe if we just push it this way, Mom said, giving it a try. Boing. Been there, done that, moaned Oliver. Perhaps if we just pull it that way, Dad said. Boing. Been there, done that, groaned Oliver. I could curl it, offered Emily, ready to roll. Oliver stared a steely stare at his sister. I don't think so. Oh, then we'll just wet it, said Mom. Yes, let's just wet it, they all agreed. So they watered Oliver. They splished him and splashed him, gave him a good soak and dunk. Ah, they said, sighing a confident job well done sigh. Oliver's bedhead was now one dripping wet head. And then it dried. Boing, boing, blink, blink. Hair started going this way, hair started going that way, then up, then down, around and around, and there was now a bigger clump of hair way at the back of his head that looked just like a cat's coughed up fur ball. Gosh. I say we spray, shouted Dad, taking aim with the squirt. Yes, spray, spray, cried out Mom and Emily. So spray already, sputtered Oliver. So they spritzed him and sprayed him, and they gooped, glopped, and moosed him. They even hairpinned him flat in 5 places for good measure. Ah, they said, sighing a confident job well done sigh. Oliver's bedhead was now one slick gel head. And then Pins went flying, boing, bing, bing, boing. Hair started going this way, hair started going that way, then up, down, around and around, and there was now an even bigger clump of hair way at the back of his head that looked just like a cat's coughed up fur ball. Oliver wondered, maybe if I just sort of, brushed it a bit. No, no, the three shouted, seeing the boy with the bristles poised. Whatever you do, no, no, no brush. Too late. Oh yes, the brush got stuck. Not stuck in the hair going this way or that, not stuck in the hair going up and down, not even stuck in the hair going around and around, but stuck, yes, very, very, very stuck in the clump way at the back of his head that looked just like a cat's coughed up fur ball. Mom gave it a yank. Yow! Dad gave it a pull. Ouch! And Emily gave it one long tug. Yike! Well, said Mom without a bit of a doubt, that brush is stuck all right. Definitely stuck, decided Dad. A done deal, declared Emily. Then, just when they were about to give up hope, Oliver saw the answer right there on the wall. That's it, he pointed, the hat. The hat, go get that hat. So without one more thought of a spritz, spray, or dunk, they all helped Oliver squish, smush, and cram every bit of Bedhead, stuck brush and all, into his faithful old battered, but true, blue baseball cap. Well, almost. Good enough. And with a kiss and a wave, Oliver headed off to school. Everything was fine. Everything was dandy. And then Mary Margaret, who sat in the third row, 4 seats down, 1 desk across from Oliver and Mrs. Oppenheimer's class at Biddlemeyer Elementary, looked over to him and said, "You can't wear that hat." Oliver looked over to Mary Margaret. "Can too." "Can not." "And just why not?" demanded Oliver, holding tightly on to his hat. Mary Margaret grinned. "Because it's picture day." "Picture day?" stuttered Oliver. "Picture day," sang out Mrs. Oppenheimer, standing in front of the class. "Everyone line up for our class picture. Back straight, faces front, smiles wide, and hats off." "Uh-oh," said Oliver. "Hats off?" "We're waiting, Oliver," said Mrs. Oppenheimer, as everyone took their places. "We're waiting, Oliver," said Mary Margaret. "We're waiting, Oliver," said everyone else. "Hey, kid," said the man behind the camera. "Yeah, you with the lumpy-looking head. Off with that hat." Oliver hemmed. He hawed, but he knew he had it. He lifted the brim and slowly took off his faithful old battered but true blue baseball cap. He held his breath. He closed his eyes, and he waited. He waited some more. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. He opened his eyes and looked up. There was no hair going this way, no hair going that way, no hair going up, down, not even around and around. And nobody could see the brush stuck in the clump of hair way at the back of his head that looked like a cat's coughed up fur ball. "Ah," said Oliver, sighing a confident job, well done sigh. "Ready, everyone?" sang out Mrs. O. "Big smiles, and say cheese on the count of 3. 1, she said. 2, she said, and then, boing, bing, bang, boing, hair started going this way, or hair started going that way, hair started going up, down, around and around, and the brush that was stuck in the clump of hair way at the back of his head that looked just like a cat's coughed up fur ball let loose and boinged Mary Margaret on top of her head and boomeranged right into Mrs. Oppenheimer's nose. 3, said the boinked Mrs. O, just as she and everyone else at Biddlemeyer Elementary got a look at Oliver and his bedhead. "Oh, geez." Click. "Got it," said the photographer. And there's the class. And there's poor Oliver with his bedhead. The end.
Thanks for joining us for Storytime, the TV Read Aloud show, here on the Education Channel.
Our next story is Bubba the Cowboy Prince, a fractured Texas tale, written by Helen Ketterman and illustrated by James Warhola. Our guest reader, Cindy Anderson, former theater director.
Once a strapping young feller named Bubba lived on a ranch with his wicked stepdaddy and his hateful and lazy stepbrothers, Dwayne and Milton. Bubba's stepdaddy spoiled Dwayne and Milton no end, But Bubba worked from sunup to sundown doing the chores of 3 ranch hands. Bubba never complained, though. He loved ranching. Dwayne and Milton spent their days sitting on horseback, bossing Bubba around. "Get them doggies along there, Bubba," ordered Dwayne. "Yeah, and watch out for them there cow patties," added Milton. "You know how Daddy hates for you to track up the house." Now, Miss Lurleen, who lived down the road a piece, she was the purtiest and richest gal in the county. She owned the biggest spread west of the Brazos, and she loved ranching too. But it was lonesome work, and after a while she decided it was time for some companionship. "I aim to find myself a feller," she said, "one who loves ranching as much as I do, and it wouldn't hurt if he was cute as cow's ear either." Miss Lurleen decided to throw a ball. She sent invitations to all the ranchers in Texas. Soon the day of the ball arrived. Milton and Dwayne spent all day getting gussied up in their finest duds. Bubba about ran himself ragged waiting on them. "Bubba," shouted Dwayne, "fetch my bolo tie." "Bubba," shouted Milton, "get my boots polished." "Bubba," shouted his wicked stepdaddy, "brush them horses and wash that wagon." By the time Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy were ready to go, Bubba was exhausted. Still, as they climbed into the wagon, Bubba asked, "Can't you wait for me to get ready? I want to dance with Miss Lurleen too." Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy hooted and hollered. "Why, you're sorrier than a steer in a stockyard," said Dwayne. "Can you imagine Miss Lurleen dancing with the likes of you?" said Milton. "Miss Lurleen wouldn't even wipe the dirt clods off her boots with that raggedy shirt of yours, and you smell more like the cattle than the cattle do." Bubba took a look at himself. It was true. He didn't have a decent shirt to wear. His boots were downright disgraceful, and he did smell a bit rough. Milton and Dwayne were right. Miss Lurleen wouldn't dance with the likes of him. Bubba hung his head. He felt lower than a rattlesnake in a gully. Milton, Dwayne, and their wicked daddy went on off to the ball. Bubba mounted his horse and headed for the pasture to check on the herd. The sky was getting darker than a black bull at midnight. It looked like a Texas thunderstorm was brewing. Bubba had just arrived at the cow pasture when a bolt of lightning struck, knocking him off his horse. Bubba was stunned for a moment, but when he picked himself up, he heard a voice. "Go to the ball, Bubba," said the voice. Bubba looked around. No one was there except him and the cows. Now, Bubba figured he'd bonked the bejeepers out of his bean because the voice was coming from a cow. She chewed her cud and for a moment and then said, "I'm your fairy god cow, and I can help you go to the ball." Bubba sat up, rubbing his head. "I'd like to go, Miss God Cow, but shoot, I don't have a thing to wear." The fairy god cow swished her tail, and Bubba's raggedy clothes changed into the handsomest cowboy duds he'd ever laid eyes on. His jeans were crisp, his boots were shiny, his shirt was dazzling, and his Stetson was whiter than a new salt lick. "Why, I look downright purty," said Bubba. The fairy god cow swished her tail again, and a nearby steer turned into the most beautiful white stallion Bubba had ever seen. "Now you go on off to the ball, Bubba, and have a good time dancing with Miss Lurleen, but you'd best be home by midnight, 'cause that's when the magic runs out." "Yahoo!" shouted Bubba as he jumped on the white horse and galloped off to the ball. When Bubba arrived, the hoedown was in full swing, but every time Miss Lurleen finished a dance, she yawned. "There goes another $10 Stetson on a 5-cent hat," she complained. "Where are all the real cowboys?" By the time it was Bubba's turn to dance with Miss Lurleen, it was almost midnight. Soon as she saw Bubba, Miss Lurleen's eyes lit up. "Why, you're cute as a cow's ear," she said. Bubba blushed and then took Miss Lurleen in his arms and started dancing. Dwayne and Milton turned purple with jealousy. "Who's that dude?" said Dwayne. "I don't recollect seeing him before, but he looks might familiar," said Milton. "Do something," said their wicked daddy. "That cowboy is winning Miss Lurleen's heart." As it turned out, Milton and Dwayne didn't have to do a thing because Bubba and Miss Lurleen were in the middle of do-si-doing when the clock struck midnight. Suddenly, Bubba's fine duds turned into dirty rags he usually wore around the ranch. He looked sorry and he smelled worse. "What is that awful smell?" asked Milton. "Why, it's Bubba!" shouted Dwayne. Bubba turned 14 shades of red, apologized to Miss Lurleen, and ran out of the room. Wait, she yelled, chasing after him. But Bubba didn't wait. He jumped on his cow and lumbered off into the night. In the ruckus, he lost one of his dirty cowboy boots. Miss Lurleen clasped it in her arms. This is the boot of a real cowboy, and I am the man I want to marry, and I aim to find him. Miss Lurleen went back inside, and though she asked everybody at the ball, nobody knew who the mysterious cowboy was. Nobody except Dwayne and Milton, and their wicked daddy, that is, but they weren't talking. The next day, Miss Lurleen went from ranch to ranch looking for the cowboy who owned the boot. When she came to Dwayne and Milton's ranch, both brothers tried the boot on, but it didn't fit. Miss Lurleen had just climbed on her horse to leave when Bubba rode up. He was dirty and sweaty and smelly from working with the cows, and he was only wearing one boot. Miss Lurleen jumped off her horse and ran over to Bubba. "Try this on," she cried. Bubba took his dirty old boot and pulled it on. "Much obliged, ma'am," he said, blushing. It fit perfectly. "You're my prince in cowboy boots," shouted Miss Lurleen. "I'd recognize that smell anywhere. Marry me, cowboy, and help me work my ranch." Dwayne and Milton and their wicked daddy threw chicken fits. But Bubba just smiled, and he and Miss Lurleen rode off into the sunset, and they lived happily ever after, roping and cowpoking and getting them doggies along.
This is the Education Channel, home of Storytime, the daily TV read-aloud show.
Our next story is To Market, written by Anne Miranda and illustrated by Janet Stevens. Our guest reader, Janice Behling, community member.
And our next book today is called To Market. To Market, to buy a fat pig. Home again, jiggity jig. To market, to buy a red hen. Home again, uh-oh, that pig left the pen. To market, to buy a plump goose. Home again, uh-oh, the hen's on the loose. To market, to buy a live trout. Home again, uh-oh, the goose was let out. To market, to buy a spring lamb. Home again, uh-oh, away the trout swam. To market for one milking cow. Home again, uh-oh, where is that lamb now? To market, to buy a white duck. Now the cow disappeared and I'm out of luck. To market for one stubborn goat. The duck flew the coop and the goat ate my coat. This is the last straw. I'm a shopping disgrace. Everything's running all over the place. The pig's in the kitchen, the lamb's on the bed, the cow's on the couch, there's a duck on my head. The hen's in the cupboard, the goose is there too. The goat's in the closet, it's chewing my shoe. The trout's in the bathtub, this place is a zoo. I'm hungry, I'm cranky, now what will I do? To market, to buy some potatoes, celery, beets, and some ripe red tomatoes. Some pea pods and peppers and garlic and spice. A round head of cabbage, a sack of brown rice. An okra and onions and one carrot bunch. Home again, hot soup is for lunch.
It's story time every day on the Education Channel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Collier County Public Schools, Barnes & Noble Bookseller, and Naples Daily News for making Storytime possible. Storytime is a production of the school district's Communications and Community Engagement Department and the Education Channel, your window to education.